I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Monday, March 2nd, 2015. We're here for the purpose of the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council. I would ask that you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Spencer, could you please call roll?
Gutenkopf. Absent. Deuter.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Polumsky.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Toledo.
Here.
York.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Onquist.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
13 present, 1 absent.
13 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum. On to agenda item 2.1, receipt of written communications from the public. At this time, is there anyone in the audience who has any written communication in which to submit? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 3.1, public forum. Public forum, this is an opportunity for anybody in our audience who wishes to address the council to do so. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes out of respect for work that we have to get done up here, and also out of respect for other folks that may want to speak. If you go over your 3 minutes, I will give you a gentle reminder and ask you to wrap up. Clerk Spencer, at this time, is there anybody who has signed up for public forum?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we'll start with Claude Pagash, 566 West Gladys.
Mr. Pagash, please announce your name, and address is optional.
Claude Pagash, 566 West Gladys. Received a front porch. Interesting little document. 30% of the money this council spends comes through property taxes, sales taxes. Another 21% comes from fees, and it says so right here in the front porch. All we get is $29 tax break. And look at what we have on the agenda tonight. Rubbish removal. Yeah, I guess there's going to be an increase, right? Though there is a minority report. Interesting. So we get a little, and we provide the majority of the money that this council spends and gives away. And I doubt seriously if it's ever going to go down, because we keep on giving more and more away. And there's all legitimate reasons for it. When you take into account that you're worried about the profit of an individual, then it's maybe just pushing it a little bit. And on this rubbish, just don't know if any of the aldermen have been paying attention to his service. It's kind of fallen off since the first year he was running it. So in this discussion, maybe we ought to have some of the council members think about what they've seen in his ability to provide the service. And last but not least, we got this electronic monitoring meeting, alderman on the screen. As a resident, I don't care for it. That would indicate to me that that individual is not in his ward, hasn't taken the time to find out what's on the agenda that he may have to vote on. May very well be depending on somebody else to suggest to him what is right and wrong. So if the alderman can't be here, he can't be here. If you all can't be here, you don't have quorum, you just won't hold a meeting.
Mr. Pagash, if you
This
could wrap
idea-
up, I'd appreciate it.
This idea of a viewing screen leaves me begin to wonder why, just how much effort that alderman is putting in.
Tamara Brenner.
Tamara Brenner. I'm interested in these committee reports tonight, too. We are going to be having increased fees. We might have small tax reductions in one place, but we have increased fees in other places. The balance seems to be for still paying out more every year. I like the electronic means of attending meetings. 100% allowance of electronic attendance, that is just not right. If somebody can't be here on that regular of a basis, then maybe they should not be serving in the office at that time. You should put some limits on that. The C4 Central Business District stuff, the downtown planning services. You've got majority and minority reports here. The minority reports are written by one alderman. So apparently it's okay to have a minority report by one alderman for the entire council to consider, yet this council last week said we can't have a referral brought to the council with only one alderman's name on it. That is absolutely not going to lead to anything productive. By the way, it is my recollection that the matter before us here was originally brought as a referral by one alderman. Also brought as a referral by one alderman was the referral regarding the dual office holding that went to referendum for the voters with a 77% approval of prohibiting dual office holding. That referral was brought to this council by one alderman. So the referral process requiring two alderman signatures, that should go away. I see there's no follow-up from last week's discussion, so maybe there's still hope to backtrack on that. As far as the central business district stuff goes, we've got the horse out of the barn by many, many months. The horse is in the next county, maybe even in the next state. In some of the paperwork, we see that there's been 3 downtown projects in the past year where relief from height, density, and setbacks were requested. Yeah, that was done by the city. The city put those requests in, knowing full well that it wasn't supported by the downtown plan or the zoning code. Now they're using that, now we're using that as a reason to change the downtown plan and the zoning code. I can't think of a really better example of circular reasoning than that. And I don't know how you guys live with the cognitive dissonance you're producing amongst yourselves. The time to do this stuff was before authorizing a 6-story parking garage. After the fact is ridiculous. I don't know why we're going to pay a consultant to tell us the conclusion we already know. We know what conclusion we want to reach. You're going to get to that conclusion whether you pay a consultant $50,000 some odd dollars or not. So why don't you just cut that out and get to the end game anyway? That's where we're going. The rest of this is a veneer, it's a facade, and it doesn't seem like a legitimate process to me. Thanks.
Michael Cremery.
Michael Cremery of the 500 block of West Crockett, and I was unable to attend the last city council meeting, but yes, I would like to revive the discussion of chickens. Chapter 11, signs. Current ordinance state the following. 22.255, definition and classifications of signs. Subtitle A, definition of functional types. For the purpose of this code, signs shall be classified following according to function. Quote, attention-getting device, close quote, means a sign or other device designed to attract attention by means of flashing or moving parts, bright color, light, movement of any kind. Examples such as signs include pennants hung in a series, whirligigs, spinners, streamers, flashlights, searchlights, beacons, balloons, or similar inflatable devices. And I apologize, I forgot to mention that maybe just to mix it up here, I might throw in a few movie quotes. Signs specifically prohibited in all districts. This is 22.257. The following signs, as well as all other signs not expressly permitted by this section, are prohibited in all districts and shall not be erected, maintained, or permitted to continue in any district. Sub B, attention-getting devices. Sub D, moving or animated signs. E, off-premises identification signs. M, any sign on public property except governmental signs authorized in this section. Any sign painted directly on a wall, roof, fence, bridge, or railroad trestle. Q, any sign not expressly permitted in this chapter. Some examples of sign ordinance violations were provided during recent DPZ committee meetings. One of them was a used car business on the corner of Lake and West Avenue. Reported during the February 9th and February 23rd DPZ meeting, a review on Saturday, February 28th indicated that the violation had been corrected. Yet there were 2 colorful banner flags indicating open were displayed on the corner of Lake and West Avenue. The banner flags were 8 to 10 feet tall with a metal bar and were placed in the public right-of-way. Also on display were some signs stuck in the snow indicating "Now hiring, apply within." The business name was not provided on the sign, so not sure how a person needing employment would know where to apply. Should the unemployed person contact City Hall to inquire about the owner of the illegal sign to be able to request a job interview? New Crepes, located on Schiller Court, reported during the February 9th, February 23rd DPZ committee meeting, yet on Saturday, February 28th, the sign violations remain. Specifically, 22257, signs specifically prohibited in all districts. E, off-premises identification signs. M, any sign on public property except governmental signs authorized in this section. N, any sign painted directly on a wall, roof, fence, bridge, or railroad trestle. During the DPZ meeting on February 9th,
Mr. Crummer, you're about 20 seconds over. I'd ask you to wrap it up, please.
oh, I'm just getting started. That's Lieutenant Colonel Frank Slade. During the DPZ committee meeting.
Mr. Crumry, do you have an intention of wrapping up? We have a policy here that we ask you to wrap it up within 3 minutes.
You said we have a policy or you have a policy?
I said we have a policy.
Okay. Well, let me quote Cindy Lou who says, "You made that up. It doesn't say that." To which the mayor of Whoville responds, "Oh, no, it does." Well, what page? So allow me to read you that section, Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
206.
Mr.
I
Crumry,
wish not to be interrupted, sir.
I asked you a question. Do you intend to wrap up, yes or no?
When I'm done with what I'm reading, yes, sir.
You want to give me a time frame?
10 minutes.
Now, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay, I'll read you the council rules.
I don't
Sub-item
need to hear
F-
the council rules, Mr. Crumry.
Sub F, please don't interrupt me, sir. Addressing the council. During public forum, any member of the public may address the council on any subject. The person wishing to speak may address the city council after he or she has been called upon by the presiding officer or city clerk. All comments shall be addressed to the presiding officer. The presiding officer may impose reasonable limits on the time to be allowed for public forum and for each speaker who takes part therein, giving consideration to the probable number of speakers and lateness of the hour. Emphasis on giving consideration to the probable number of speakers and lateness of the hour. This meeting just started, and we've only had 3 people speak. So are you saying that at the next meeting, if you have 9 people speak, you're only going to give each person 1 minute?
I'm saying, Mr. Crumry, that we usually have people speak for 3 minutes, and apparently you don't understand that.
Okay, well, let me finish with the New Crepes situation. So in the front porch, page 2, there's a photo of the mayor along with several aldermen during the December 15th, 2014 groundbreaking of the Addison Street parking garage. Are the residents of Elmhurst supposed to honestly believe that no one in that group looked eastward and no one saw the huge yellow arrow painted on the building that is in clear violation of the city code? Signs stuck in the snow at iMotorsports. 2 signs were stuck in the snow in the public right-of-way. To help encourage purchase of motorcycles, one of the signs indicates, "Think Spring." One would hope businesses that receive free money courtesy of the Elmhurst taxpayers would
Point of
be
order,
able to
Mr. Mayor.
follow the sign ordinances.
Excuse me, Mr. Crumry.
In an effort to be fair to all of the residents who want to speak whenever, we have a rule and we follow it. I understand Mr. Crumry's position, but we do have a lot of other business to go forward with tonight, and that's one of the factors that caused this council to set a 3-minute limit. And we have that limit, and if the chair, I'd ask the chair to rule so that we can get on with the business of the council. No disrespect to Mr. Crumry, I have great respect for his analysis and what he's presented. I've heard it before, and I think it's well analyzed, but I think we need to comply with the council's rules.
Mr. Crumry, are you finished?
Was the council going to debate that proposal, or?
It's not a motion. It's a point of order. I'm asking you first before I ask the council, are you finished?
No, sir, I'm not.
You want to give me a time frame?
I gave you a time frame earlier of 10 minutes, sir.
Well, I don't think I can allow that. The point of order has been raised by Alderman Levin as to whether or not this should be allowed under our code. I'm going to have to consult with the city attorney. Yeah, but I don't, the problem is, I don't have my city code in front of me. Nothing in the city code. Yeah, I don't put address it. And it's our policy. Yeah. Well, it does say 3 minutes on our sign-in sheet, but in this case, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to ask Mr. Levin to make a motion, putting a limit on this. If you want to give the speaker 30 more seconds. 'Cause
So
I
do we have a
wanna-
policy to interrupt public comments to do a motion?
As chairman, I run the meeting. I can do what I want, Mr. Crumry.
We've kind of noticed that, sir.
Mr. Levin, would you care to make a motion supporting city policy in this? Because I'd really like to get council feedback.
I would move that
My
we-
other option that I have is I can actually, clear the room, which is not something that I'm inclined to do. So I'd like to get the will of the council.
I would move that we ask Mr. Crummy to wrap up in 3 additional minutes.
We have a motion to allow Mr. Crumry to speak for additional 3 minutes. Do we have a second? We have a second. Any discussion? Alderman Braham.
I think this is actually out of order. I don't know how that we propose an ordinance.
I'm asking for direction from council. As chairman, I can rule to have him not speak anymore.
As chairman, I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. As chairman, I believe it is your position to rule on this one way or another, but to have a motion and have the full city council vote on one particular speaker, I don't think is appropriate.
Okay, well, it's my option to do so. I did check with the city attorney. Any other comments? Those in favor of allowing Mr. Crummy to speak for 3 more minutes, we'll do this by voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Okay, we have a majority. Mr. Crummy, I'm going to give you 3 more minutes and ask you to wrap up after that.
I'll wrap up in 30 seconds. Why must the citizens specifically bring the violations to the attention of this administration when they are occurring right in front of City Hall or along the streets that each of you drive along on a daily basis? Thank you for your time.
Clerk Spencer?
Mike Baker.
Mike Baker, 432 East Park. I'm pleased to see the progress on the Golden Meadows project for stormwater mitigation and encourage you to continue moving forward to help Fourth Ward residents and other flood-prone residents of Elmhurst. I'd like to quote a document from the city's website from 2014 in October regarding the Golden Meadows project. Creating flood storage in the open space area of Golden Meadows Park would significantly reduce the risk of flooding for homes on Pine Street and Avon and the Brynhaven subdivision flood problem areas in Elmhurst. The next mention of Brynhaven in minutes comes from the Park Board meeting, the Stormwater Subcommittee meeting as posted on the Park Board's website from January 19, 2015. The last update on the city's website was January 15, 2015. It goes on to say that near the end of the meeting of the Stormwater Subcommittee, discussion took place regarding Golden Meadows Park, which at one point, based upon a request from the subcommittee, Burke Engineering clarified that while the proposed Golden Meadows project will provide assistance to Pine Street and Avon Road, it would not, as currently designed, provide any stormwater relief for the Brynhaven neighborhood. For years, I have been told by city officials that any plan at Golden Meadows would help the people of Bryn Haven. I have emails which say that. But according to Burke Engineering, it's back to square one for the residents of Bryn Haven. As homeowners throughout Elmhurst, in the 4th Ward from Crescent Park to the south, to Linden Avenue, Geneva, Clinton, and the East End area, as we start beginning to worry about stormwater and spring rains, we now have to wonder if the plans we're being told would happen would actually occur. When they are given some hope, the residents, and it's taken away, residents wonder what's going to happen next. I would ask city staff to communicate more effectively to our residents on the city's website. Residents shouldn't have to find out information for themselves from a non-city website. These are city projects. The last concept drawings on the city's website is the soccer field, which was not approved by the park board. I implore the city to look at Golden Meadows and develop a means or plans to help Bryn Haven as promised. As we proceed to mitigate stormwater throughout the 4th Ward and the city, I hope you will consider a more concise way of communicating changes in planning to those residents that it will probably affect the most. Thanks.
Kathleen Sullivan, 133 Pine.
Kathleen Sullivan. Today is NPC International Badge Day, and women across Elmhurst and across the country join their Panhellenic sisters in wearing their badges of their sororities of membership and enjoying the fact that we're all sorority members and emphasizing on women's education and leadership. In addition, Elmhurst Panhellenic is having their Wild for Fashion 2015 on Friday, March 13th at the River Forest Country Club here in Elmhurst. Tickets are available. You can find links to our invitation on both of our websites, elmhurstpanhellenic.com or .org. Thank you.
That's all who signed in for tonight, Mr.
Okay, that's everyone who's had an opportunity to sign in. Is there anybody who has not had an opportunity to sign in our sign-in sheet that wishes to address the council? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll go on. Announcements. Any announcements from the dais? Seeing none, we'll go to,
Mr. York.
oh, I'm sorry, Mr. York.
That's fine. I was late. Thank you, Your Honor. It's a fundraising event month here in Elmhurst. The first one on the agenda is the YMCA Gala. It's Saturday, March 14th, starting at 6:30. It's at River Forest Country Club, and details can be found at ymcachicago.org. Thank you.
Okay, any other announcements? Alderman Mulliner.
Just a reminder that this Saturday, Spring Road will be closed for the St. Patrick's Day Parade. It begins at noon at Wilson and Spring and goes up to the IC tracks.
IC tracks. International Canadian tracks, is that what you're saying, Alderman Mulliner?
International Central.
Okay.
Central. Sorry, Central Gulf.
Any other announcements? Seeing none, we'll go on to consent agenda. At this time, is there anything on the consent agenda any alderman wishes to have removed, to vote no, or provide comment? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as published. Motion by Alderman York, second by Alderman Palumsky. Clerk Spencer.
York.
Aye.
Palumsky. Aye. Graham.
Aye.
Paludo.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkauf, absent. Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays. Motion carries. Consent agenda is approved as published. On to agenda item 6, committee reports. Quite a few, majority and minority this evening. Agenda item 6.1, Clerk Spencer, could you read the recommendation?
Yes, sir. It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Works and Buildings Committee that the city billing rates for 65 and 95 gallon container service, refuse stickers, and park and yard, waste stickers be adjusted annually as indicated on the attached spreadsheet for the contract period of 2015 and 2016. Signed by Jim Kennedy, Chairman, Chris Healy, Vice Chairman, Diane Gutenkopf, and unsigned by Michael J. Brand.
Okay, to put this before the council, I'll ask for approval of the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Kennedy, second by Alderman Healy. Alderman Kennedy, this is your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is our annual review of the refuse rates that we do based on our contract. And so we get a baseline number from Republic or Allied, on what it costs for them to service a 65-gallon and 95-gallon toters, and then if they pick up something that has a refuse sticker or a yard waste sticker on it, they have those rates to us. We then, as a committee, look at what it costs us to administer that program. And in this case, it's the leaf pickup. There's a number of things on there. Street sweeping, supplies, IT, city services, all those things that go in for the city to administer the program. And that's a total of just shy of $319,000 to do that. And so what we have done historically, and we always do, is we put administrative fees on top of each one of those things, the toters, the refuse sticker, and the yard waste sticker, to ultimately recoup those costs and ultimately come to pretty close to a zero-sum game. And then the billing rates that all the residents see is what goes forward. In the past, we have taken a kind of a prorated approach, and this was long before my time on Public Works, and as to what those values should be. And what I said last year is that I was okay with the way it was done, but coming into this year, I wanted to have another look at it. And my thought is that these are service fees, and they are regardless of how big your toter is. Each individual homeowner is already being charged based on the amount of refuse that they have the ability to throw away, be it a 65 or a 95-gallon container. And so what I have proposed here in the majority report that Alderman Healy signed is to ultimately move that back to what would in future years be a flat fee. You know, if I look at my ComEd bill, there's a customer charge on there. Regardless of how much power I use, I get a charge on there. It's $11.53 for the month, regardless of how much my children leave the lights on. From a gas bill standpoint, there's another customer charge, and that's the same the year over, regardless of how much of that resource that I use. And so the premise I hear going forward with this revision is we ultimately move to a point where it's a flat fee. We're not there yet because we have such a disparity in previous years, but this is the first step so that in future years, the administrative fee for the size of the receptacle would be the same regardless of which one you're using. Thank
Okay.
you.
Other comments? Alderman Healy?
Thank you, Mayor. So the position that Chairman Kennedy just outlined was discussed. I suspect here fairly shortly we will hear from a very different perspective. And when we got to the committee, basically this majority report is a compromise position on the administrative fees. You'll notice that the fees are not level set, which would be Chairman Kennedy's wish. They are a little, they are closer to being level set, though, you know, we'll see what future council and committee action is. But the compromise was really meeting somewhere in the middle, because there was a lot of discussion in committee about whether that flat approach is the right way to go, how that flat approach would make the 65 and 95-gallon toter overall, how would that make it look? And I, speaking for myself only, I was uneasy that the flat rate approach would make the 65-gallon and the 96-gallon look out of whack. A couple years ago, when this contract came up, the committee and Allied worked very hard to try to position the rates where we wanted them to, in terms of, you know, not necessarily a per gallon, but make it more attractive to get the smaller. We tried to make sure that the the costs were level set so that everybody saw some reduction when we renewed the contract, and we accomplished that. So this report, bringing it back, is really a compromise position, getting it more in line with what Chairman Kennedy would like to see, but at the same time keeping the balance between the total rate, the total monthly rate for the 65 and the 95 gallons. So the majority report is a compromise of the two positions.
Okay, any other comments? Alderman Braham.
Thank you. I was just looking around to give others a chance. Alderman Kennedy and Alderman Healy gave a good summary in regards to our discussions in committee. Historically, what we have done as part of the City Council, part of the Public Works Committee, is use the administrative rates, yes, to recoup cities' costs. Dead on accurate, as Alderman Kennedy pointed out. But what our policy has been, our philosophy has been, is to level the cost overall between 65, nowadays, it used to be 32, but 65 and 95 gallons. I don't think it's appropriate for us as a city to take an about face, at least at this juncture, on what our philosophy has been for at least the last 14 plus years. Alderman Healy voiced his concerns over that in committee and said that this is a compromised position. Alderman Gutenkopf isn't here this evening, but she also voiced as well the concerns of level setting administrative costs across the board. My main concern and point, and I voiced it every time that we've talked about refuse rates in the past, is that essentially what we're doing here, the price per gallon is cheaper if you buy a 95-gallon toter. So we, being part of a Cool Cities Coalition, we being a sustainable community, having a sustainable plan, policy, working on a sustainable plan, are making a misrepresentation, some might say hypocritical, of saying that we are giving a benefit, a cheaper fee, to throw out more garbage. If we're sustainable, if we're environmentally friendly, we should be doing the opposite. We should be encouraging refuse, or encouraging recycling, and discouraging throwing out refuse. The price per gallon has become a little bit more in parity, at least from my perspective, on what I would like to see. The minority report that you see before you is what the city proposed to us in our committee meeting this year. I didn't change it, I didn't modify it. It wasn't what I wanted to see. I wanted to see actually it more adjusted in regards to price per gallon between 65 and 95. But I decided my compromise was, this is what the city's proposing, I will go with that as a compromised position. Instead of, at this point in time, trying to get it even cheaper, because a year or two ago, as my colleague stated, we did adjust it slightly. I don't understand on how we as a council could have as the majority report proposal at least, the increase for the smaller toter of 65 gallon is a 5.3% increase from current to now. A 95 gallon is a 1.3 increase, 4 times that percentage. So again, we're encouraging to throw out more garbage. One of the interesting notes that I found out in our last committee discussion, because there was an allied rep there, I turned to him and asked him point blank on where did you come up with the Republic or allied rates? And essentially he had no justification. It was, well, it was similar to what we've done before. The response was not, and let me emphasize, was not, well, it's based on dumping fees for the landfills. It's based on fuel costs or any other legitimate data, at least in my opinion. It wasn't based on that. It was throwing a dart and seeing where it lands, at least in my perception on what was stated, because there was no facts on where the actual rates came from their side. That's in the contract today. That's in our contract, and we're locked in for that. We can't change that, but we can, and what we should adjust, and what our philosophy has always been, is to use the administration rates to recoup all cities' costs, but to level set. The customers don't care, our residents don't care what we're charging for city administration rates. The customers care what the end bill is, what they get in the mail every month. And the end bill should be fair to them. The end bill should be encouraging them to recycle, not to throw out more trash. So at this time, I would like to make a motion to substitute the majority report with the minority report.
Substitute the minority for the majority.
Oh, I said it different words.
Same deal, okay. We have a motion to substitute the minority for the majority. Do we have a second? Alderman Bram, I don't believe there's a second. Motion fails without a second. Back to the underlying motion, agenda item 6.1. Any additional comments or questions on that report? Alderman Palumski.
Thank you, Mayor. My first question when reading reports was, would different rates for different toters encourage or discourage people to generate waste? And I was told that that should not be a difference, but what is going to encourage people to generate less waste and recycle more is the unlimited recycling that we provide. So that was a concern, and I was assured that the rates would not be contributing to people throwing more away. Thank you.
Any other comments? Alderman Bram?
Well, I'm disappointed that we're stifling even conversation on the minority report. I think all reports should see just discussion. The last comment I will say is I don't know where the data points are of will the cost encourage additional refuse or not compared to unlimited recycling. But I will say that I don't feel that the majority report having a 4% increase from a 1.3 for the 95 gallon, a 5.3 from the 65 gallon is justified or fair, especially for the seniors in the city of Elmhurst. We can't say that we're a sustainable city and charge less per gallon for a larger toter to allow residents to throw out more waste. It makes no sense. We need to pick a side of the fence. Either we're a sustainable community or we're not. And I think that by doing this, we are sending a double message here that we are saying we're a sustainable community, but our actions are showing otherwise.
Any other comments? Clerk Spencer, I'd ask you to call the roll.
I just have one.
Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman Dunn, didn't see it.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I do recall when I was on the Public Works Committee, the review of the contract proposal and the initial assessment of the rates, and the feeling was that we were definitely pleased to investigate that by the referral, and that the rates were going down. A lot of discussion on the recycling aspect, and from what we were told from Allied is Elmhurst is very high in their recycling rates, extremely high when you benchmark to other cities, and they really couldn't think of other ways to increase that. So what we were doing with our two different toter sizes and just the public awareness, I think we are a sustainable town, and we do recycle at high rates. So I don't think the mix between 65 and 95 is going to impact. I think the intention of the Elmhurst residents is to be as green as possible, and that shows from the data we see from our recycling rates. Thank you.
Alderman Levin.
I just wanted to ask a question. Is if I'm reading this correctly, the difference between what the minority report would have asked and what the majority report is recommending is on the is either 24 cents or 54 cents a month is the swing between the two reports. Is that correct?
Yes. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Conquest.
Aye.
Mullenor.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf, absent. Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham,
No.
Toledo,
Aye.
York,
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
12 ayes, 1 nays, 1 absent.
12 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Majority report, item 6.1 is approved. On to report number 6.3. It's a report out of Finance. Clerk Spencer, I would ask that you read the recommendation.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Finance, Council Affairs, and Administrative Services Committee that the City Council approve by motion pursuant to MCO Chapter 2.06 JJ, the attached rules for the conduct of the City Council and Standing Committee meetings via electronic means. Signed by Kevin L. York, Chairman, Bob Dunn, Vice Chairman, Marty Deuter, and Noel P. Toledo.
Okay, to put this before the council, I will ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. A motion by Alderman York, second by Alderman Dunn. Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think the report is pretty clear. The rules are there that we spent quite a bit of time getting those right as a committee. I think they turned out great, but I think the overall message is that with times changing and people being gone on business, not disconnected from city business, but physically not being able to attend because they're in other locations for business, gives their constituencies better representation by adopting these new rules for attendance via electronic means. So everything is right there. I'd be happy to answer any questions or address any concerns that anybody might have.
Okay, any comments? Alderman Bram?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to start by thanking the committee for reviewing this. This was, I think, mine and former Alderman Pez's referral, I believe, if my memory serves me correct.
It's in the report.
Okay.
What's that?
No, go ahead, continue, Mr. Bram.
What I was stating was, so thank you for the committee for their due diligence on this. My concern for this referral was to, one, we did not have any policy or any ordinance stating on if this was allowed in city council committee meetings. And I thought that was a necessity to be reviewed. And I see that it has, and the current recommendation is to allow that to occur. And I think that is appropriate. I think it shouldn't be limited to a city council meeting, but it also should be allowed to city council committee meetings as well. So that is definitely something I think that is beneficial. But I think the one area of the report, the recommendation that I am not in agreement with is about how we went from restrictive, 3 meetings in a year, to unlimited or carte blanche, saying you can do it every single week. I don't know what the philosophy, I didn't pull the rationale from looking at the meeting minutes of the committee on this topic and what the philosophy it is to give carte blanche. But ignoring the fact of, is that appropriate representation? Would you want your elected official every week? And I'm not saying anybody will or has done this, but do we want our code to state that every single week that elected official could not be physically available for their constituency? I think that is too dramatic. I think we went from one side of the perspective here, the spectrum, and being too restrictive of saying 3, to carte blanche saying you never have to come to City Hall anymore. We might as well get rid of the chambers and all log in remotely, and being dramatic. So I don't think that's appropriate. I think it should be limited to a certain degree, and at this time I'd like to make a motion to amend. And pretty much the amendment would be to limit it to 12 times a year.
Where would you put that, Alderman Bram? Is there a specific part on here?
Second paragraph, the second bulleted item.
Second bulleted item.
Yes, sir. Instead of it saying, therefore, there should be no limit to attendance.
I think it's in the rules.
Follow me?
Well, we're amending the report regardless of what's attached to it, so. Well, is that just a reference? think the rules are just a reference at this point. Or is that an attachment part of the report?
No, the guidelines are part of the report.
This is part of the report?
Yeah, and where in the guidelines are you referring to, Alderman? I'm not,
No limit in attendance by electronic means. And the report, I know where he is.
The report is the second bullet item.
yeah, but I was referring to the guidelines. In the guidelines,
Well, let's give Alderman Bram a minute to
Sure.
to formalize his motion. Alderman Bram, if you want to tighten it up a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
I withdraw the motion.
Okay? Any other comments? Alderman York?
Thank you, Your Honor. I understand the question that Alderman Bram was asking, and I'll add my perspective of the committee's discussion, and obviously any other committee members can chime in. But we did talk about having it being more unlimited again because of the representation issue. As Alderman Bram stated, it hasn't happened in the past and likely won't in the future, where somebody will be gone how many ever times a year we meet. Quite a few. Yeah, 48. Thank you, Alderman Byrne. So it's an option that's out there to get better representation. If an alderman who's going to be out of town that much is also disconnected from the committees and the city council's business, then I think we have a real issue. From what I can see, the people who have attended meetings via electronic means have done their homework like everybody always does, and they're prepared to answer questions and interject as needed. So I think he's got a good point, but I think that the voters and the citizens will definitely see that as time goes on, and that's where the rubber will meet the road as far as that person being around city council or not. Thank you.
Alderman Healy?
Thank you, Mayor. This is 2015. Technology is advancing. We now have a lot of ability to be many places at once from the same location. Several of us on the dais travel quite extensively for work, and I know everybody that does travel does their best to work around Monday nights. You know, you get used to it. However, there are times where you can't work around Monday nights. And I don't think being here is an absolute necessity on those rare occasions when you can't call in, Skype in, whatever. This is 2015, we have the technology. And I'll speak for myself, but I'm sure others would agree. Anybody that's traveling that much isn't happy about it. They don't want to be traveling, they'd rather be here, but let's face it, we all have, this isn't the primary means of support for any of us. So we have to earn a living, and if that living means you've got to be on the road, you got to be on the road, and if you can be here via technology, why wouldn't you be? So Alderman Bram talked about, and granted, he was being dramatic at his own admission about, you know, being here every week. I'll go the opposite way and say, and by the way, the U.S. House of Representatives had a situation very similar to this with Representative Duckworth. What happens if a duly elected official has a medical problem that precludes them from being here? In Representative Duckworth's case, it was a risky pregnancy. Are we going to enforce a policy on, you know, an alderman who has a risky pregnancy, or an alderman who can't get out of bed to travel but yet can still do his or her job? I mean, that's the other extreme. I'd hate to have to get into that position without this policy being in place. I don't doubt for a second that an alderman that faced a situation where not being here got in the way of doing their job, they wouldn't do the right thing. I know I would. But just because I can't be here doesn't mean I'm a less effective alderman than if I could be here via Skype or even on the telephone. This is a great policy. I appreciate the committee's work, and I'll support it 100%.
Alderman Levin?
I think that ideally, we're all here, it's good to see each other, have a debate. I've participated in one meeting remotely, and it's difficult to do. It's hard to get the chairman's attention, Mayor, when you're on the phone. And admittedly, I don't think you're quite as effective, but I do agree there are times when you won't make a meeting. And I think I might have missed one meeting in my time on here because I don't travel. The one time I had to. But the alternative is if you don't allow for it and something does come up in the situation that Alderman Healy referenced, isn't it better to have representation than no representation? I looked at the rule and I thought let's say if it were 3, and what would happen if I missed 3 meetings? Do you have the authority to remove me from office? I don't think you do. Maybe, but the voters certainly have authority, and I think it's an appeal to the voters. If you miss 24 meetings in a year, it's campaign season. I see a number of candidates out there, none of my opponents, of course, who are looking at the record of the person who holds the seat. And if someone misses a large number of meetings, that's an issue. And if it's explainable by work commitments or health commitments or health issues, then that's something that the voters would decide. So I do think it was a good referral. I think the committee looked at it and came up with a reasonable and actually a very good proposal here. If it is deemed later that some adjustments needed, it'll be adjusted, but this is a good place to make a policy.
Alderman Dunn, then I'll go to Alderman Palomsky.
The rules that we were updating were first created, or the existing ones were from 1997, so the communication medium that they were speaking to was generally a speakerphone. So we appreciate the opportunity to dust off these rules and bring them up to 2015, as Alderman Healy stated. Also want to thank Alderman Levin for really taking a sharp look at the rules and the wording of them and helping us to clean those up. Just a couple other points related to electronic means. State law still requires a physical quorum for the meeting, so we're not going to have 13 television screens and 1 alderman up here. Can't do that based on state law. And it's also strongly suggested to give notice, 48 hours notice, so that the constituents of that particular alderman would be aware of that, or anyone else that would expect to find them physically present would know in advance that they would be participating electronically. So I think the changes are good. They're progressive. They're keeping with the times, and I think will function the same, but it'll allow us to continue to function effectively. Thanks.
Alderman Palomsky.
Thank you. Alderman Dunn touched on some of this, and I also would like to add that state law imposes other constraints, such as reason for missing a meeting. Somebody can't just not be around and decide to call in. Somebody can't call in from vacation. So I don't believe that this will be abused.
Okay. Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some of the comments made were in regards to our existing policy. We've always had in place the existing policy of it has to be work-related, it has to be medical issue, et cetera. The real 2 changes of this proposal is putting unlimited and changing it to allowing it for committees as well. There's been made mentions on, this will be used on rare occasions. I agree. That's why I was saying that there should be a limit. If we're all agreeing, and it sounds like the commentary that I've heard, that it should be utilized on rare occasions, why are we open throttle? Why are we carte blanching it and saying it's unlimited? There should be a limit to it. In regards to representation, in regards to effectiveness in meetings, Alderman Levenert just stated, it is not as effective if it's over just a speakerphone, if it's over Skype or whatever it's over. It's not as effective when it comes to having someone remote. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's definitely a good thing to have someone remote and attending a meeting and getting their perspective and or vote on a topic if they are in one of these circumstances that they need to utilize this ordinance. It is a good thing. Is it as good as being here? No way. We have witnessed technical difficulties. It slows down the council. We've talked about public speaking a little bit earlier and the rationale of having a limit of 3 minutes. And it's the same thing. If there's technical hiccups, that is slowing down the productive nature of the city council meetings or the committee meetings. So again, to say carte blanche, it makes no sense to me. To say that it's the voters decide every 4 years if that individual should be held accountable for how many times they show up at city council meetings and or committee meetings isn't relevant to this policy. Anytime you telecommute, it impacts the others in the room. It's a fact. It's better than not having the individual there, but it's a fact. We've all stated, at least the people who have spoke on this topic tonight, have stated that it won't be abused. So I'm not sure on why we all don't have an agreement, then there should be a limit. If we're never gonna reach the limit, us or future councils, why don't we put a limit on it? By leaving it open, there is that slim possibility of allowing it to be abused. Mr. Mayor, I don't see anywhere in the rules that are stated in regards to that limitation. As my previous motion was asked of that question. So I will make an attempt to make a motion to amend on page 1, the second bullet item, to limit it to 12 times a year.
May I suggest, because I checked with council on this as well, that your motion include addition to the rules of conduct, possibly for F, said limitation that would be reflected in the report. Make sense? So if you're going to put, was it 12? You wanted to limit the frequency to 12?
Yes, sir.
So I think,
Did you just say 4F?
yeah, create a new, I'm saying create a new
Oh,
category so that the rules of conduct reflect your report, so it's not in conflict with what's attached to it.
understood. But there wasn't anything in the rules that stated that there was a limit before, so I didn't find it a necessity. I guess it's up to the city attorney.
I think it's best if your motion, and it's fine with your motion, if we put it in the report, but we also then put the limit of, if it's 12, in the, or have that limit reflected in the rules of conduct.
That's fine. Agreed.
Okay, so we have a motion, bullet point 2 on the first page of this report. Last sentence currently reads, therefore, there shall be no limit to attendance by electronic means. The motion would be to, therefore, there should be a limit of 12 occurrences of attendance by electronic means. So that's the motion, along with appropriate language added to rules of conduct. Good summary, Alderman Braham? Fair summary, I should say?
Fair and accurate, sir.
Okay. Do we have a second on the motion to amend Report 6.3? Alderman Deuter. We have a motion and a second to amend the report, limiting attendance via electronic means to 12 instances, 12 yearly instances. Okay. Alderman Deuter, any comment?
I do have a comment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I wanted to have discussion on this point. I think it's the main point that Alderman Braham has brought up in terms of opposition. I don't think that we need a limit. The current rules, there were in an earlier version of the rules, the original version of the rules, it did say, it had included a phrase that said, provided that the non-physical presence in excess of 3 times per fiscal year shall render such member absent for purposes of these rules. So it was not a restriction on it just says they're absent. And if we back into the rules of our council, it says that there can be no more than 2 absences per year if you still are going to collect your compensation for being an alderman. So there is nowhere that says you have to resign from office if you have not fulfilled your duty. We haven't, my sense is we aren't that specific. If someone, people are absent for our committee meetings, we don't put a limit that says once you've missed a certain number of meetings, you can no longer be an alderman. So I don't think it's necessary. I don't think we see that type of abuse.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the motion to amend? Seeing none, Clerk Spencer will call the vote on the motion to amend the current report to change there shall be no limit to there shall be a limit of 12 occurrences of electronic attendance, and also reflect that in the rules of conduct.
Graham.
Aye.
Reuter.
No.
Dunn.
No.
Leader.
No.
Polumsky.
No?
Toledo.
No.
York.
No.
Levin.
No.
Ely.
No.
Onquist.
No.
Kennedy.
No.
Mulliner.
No.
Wagner.
Nay.
Gutenkopf, absent. Who do I have left here? Okay, so that's 1 aye, 12 nays, and 1 absent.
1 aye, 12 nays, motion to amend fails. Back to the main motion on report 6.3. Any other comments or questions? Clerk Spencer, please call the roll.
York.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Polumsky.
Aye.
Graham.
No.
Toledo.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Ely.
Aye.
Onquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf, absent. 12 ayes, 1 nays, 1 absent.
12 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Agenda item 6.3 is approved. On to agenda item 6.4. It's a majority report out of the DP&Z. Clerk Spencer, I would ask that you read the recommendation.
Therefore, the Development Planning, Zoning, and Zoning Committee recommends that the City Council authorize the Zoning and Planning Commission to hold and conduct public hearings regarding updating the downtown plan and related public hearings to consider amendments to the zoning ordinance. Signed by Scott M. Levin, Chairman, Danny Polumsky, Vice Chairman, unsigned by Mark A. Mulliner, Alderman, 7th Ward.
Okay, to put this motion before, or put this report before the council, I will ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by somebody on, sorry. Alderman Levin, second by Alderman Polumsky. I thought Alderman York was ignoring his own report. We have a motion before us to approve. Alderman Levin, your report.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that the discussion necessarily of this report will tie into the next one, so I hope the council allows a little bit of indulgence because they necessarily have to be considered together. Back during our budget time, there was a request that was granted to put some funds in to do some planning. It had been many, many years since our downtown plan has been reviewed. There are other areas of the city where the planning is maybe not been done or has been done in a long time, I should say. And the committee, the DPZ, looked at it and said the highest priority was to look at the downtown plan to get that updated. In particular, we've had a number of applications come through seeking variances, often for height, setback, density, et cetera. And we felt that it was time to get the planning process underway. It was largely cut out of the budget in 2009. And I think there was a need to get it going sooner rather than later, because we are at a time when more and more development is being undertaken. And with that in mind, we had a contract with Housel Levine for the North York plan. They did a fine job, and instead of going out and starting over, we looked at, and I asked staff to get a proposal to present to the committee that would look at Housel Levine stepping in and pulling the old downtown plan for update in consideration of the North York plan, and this is what we came up with. The strategy or the outline of it is not for the committee itself to undertake this planning, or not even necessarily Housel Levine, who will do it as a consultant, but it's under the guidance now of the Zoning and Planning Commission. It's really their function to hold the public hearings, see what the public wants, formulate a recommendation, and send it back to Zoning and Planning Commission. So this report is, after much discussion by the committee, not saying, by the way, that, for instance, when we identify uses that should be looked at, we're not recommending to the commission that those be changed in any way or at all, or then we talk about uses, et cetera, that are maybe antiquated or ones that should be added. All of these things are things we're asking the commission to look at, to hold public hearings on, and to make a recommendation back to us, and we felt that was appropriate. I won't go into it now, but when we get into the second report, which talks about the zoning referral, will tie into this. They kind of are related, but I'll leave it at that unless the council wants to consider them together, but that's the essence of this one.
Okay. Alderman Mulliner.
I'd like to make a motion to substitute the minority report for the majority report. And I'll explain after if I get a second. If I don't get a second, there's no point in explaining.
Okay, we have a motion to replace the majority report with the minority report. Do we have a second? Second by Alderman Leader. Alderman Mulliner.
What I'd like to do is just take a moment. These two reports are very similar. There's basically a very small difference, and the difference has to do with the fact that what I'm requesting in the minority report is that we do an expedited planning of 4 specific areas within the zoning of downtown. The rest of the zoning plan be continued the same way as normal. What I'm asking is that we expedite the process of looking at the density, the setback, the parking requirements for residential, and the height requirements for businesses. Now, my reason for asking for those to be expedited so that we can move those along is because of the potential developments that are occurring in downtown. I feel that we need to give the maximum opportunity for those developments to move forward, giving them the maximum flexibility in downtown. And with a 6 to 8 month period for planning, we all know that even if we move that as fast as we can at 6 to 8 months, it's still going to be a year before those changes occur. What I'm asking is to move these 4 pieces of it a little bit faster so that we can get these done in a timely fashion so that those developers, any developer who's looking at downtown, will understand where they stand as it relates to their basic fundamental zoning requirements for downtown. The rest of it will help us to coalesce on what the plan should look like for the downtown, should review the plan, just exactly the same things that we've talked about in the other part. My concern is that we see a trend right now, and I don't want to lose that opportunity. The trend has been there. We have had 3 recent developments that have all come in. They've all asked for similar type things, and these are the 4 components that they're asking for and looking for. So my feeling is that we ought to look at these 4 components and move those forward as quickly as possible while we continue to do the rest of the planning. So that's my take on this. Thank you for your time.
Okay, any other discussion? Alderman Levin.
And I actually prepared a red line compare version. I don't think it got posted or sent around, but Alderman Mulliner described that it is to expedite a review of those. And secondly, the minority report asks that the plan and the zoning changes proceed concurrently before the Zoning and Planning Commission. And we did spend a good amount of time at committee talking about this. I don't think anyone disputes the fact that we're seeing more development coming in, but the reason, from my perspective, and I'll let Alderman Polumsky speak separately, is that the reason I think the majority report is the correct way to go is that those 4 features which the minority report suggests be expedited are really critical components of the plan for downtown. Density, height, setback, and perhaps parking not as much are all very much determinative of how our downtown's going to look. And I'm not saying I agree or disagree with what the final result would be, but I feel that by proceeding with those, because there have been a number of variance applications, yes, I agree they demonstrate the need, but to say that demonstrates the direction undermines the integrity of the planning process. What we did on North York was to have the consultant come in and staff and hold meetings where the public could come in a structured environment and present what came out to be, in my opinion, a very fine plan. If the Zoning and Planning Commission is hearing requests specifically on just these zoning requirements without the rest of the planning occurring at the same time, we are, in my opinion, putting the cart before the horse. The planning process, House Levine has said will occur in 6 to 8 months, and it might take another few months for any zoning changes that are dictated to catch up to that, so maybe we're a year down the road. And lastly, I'd say I understand we don't want to discourage developers who want to come to town, but I think they will know that we are looking at it. When they contact city staff and say they're talking about a project, they might start working on their plans and know that they may get the relief they seek without having to go through the variance and conditional use process. They may have to, but it's possible that within the year there'll be changes that would make it so that that step would be unnecessary. So in conclusion, I think that the integrity of the process requires that we do the zoning after we do the planning. That's the natural order of things, and I hope we'll do it that way.
Alderman Polumsky.
I agree with Alderman Levin. I do, one other point, though, in talking with the consultant, that we discussed the possibility of learning their findings, and then from that, moving forward with zoning. Once we have everything as a whole, we can take a look how we want to move forward. And we were assured that this shouldn't have to take quite as long as maybe some people might expect it to, that this can be, we already have them talking with staff for North York. We already know what we want. It shouldn't be too complicated of a process to update the plan that we have in place.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll on the motion to substitute the minority report for the majority report.
Mulliner,
Aye.
Leader,
Aye.
Polumsky,
No,
Graham,
No.
Toledo,
No.
York,
No.
Levin,
No.
Healy,
No.
Conquest,
No.
Kennedy,
No.
Wagner,
No.
Gutenkopf, absent, Deuter,
No.
Dunn.
No.
2 ayes, 11 nays, and 1 absent.
2 ayes, 11 nays. Motion to substitute fails. Back to the majority report. Any other comments or questions as it relates to 6.4, the majority report? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only question I have, and Alderman Levin touched on it with some of his previous comments, and maybe I can get some clarification. I'm just a little bit confused on why we are issuing Alderman Levin's statements about the cart before the horse. Why are we issuing both reports simultaneously? I do feel that the subsequent report that we will be discussing in a moment, being the planning aspect, should be handled first. And that should be done and resolved before we have any type of report nor recommendation going to the Zoning and Planning Commission. So that was the only, I don't know, that was my only analogy of the cart before the horse. I'm not sure on why we're doing a recommendation for zoning changes if we don't know what zoning changes are needed because we haven't done the plan yet. So it seems like from that aspect, we're putting the cart before the horse by having either of these reports being the majority or minority report, because we should be focusing on the plan before we talk a word about zoning.
Okay. Alderman Levin?
I think that these two, the planning and the downtown review, happened to start out from two different places and wound up at the same point. That is to say, they're both ripe to be turned over to the commission. The committee has no further work. There's no point in holding it in committee. We are sending it to the commission with direction on both to work on the plan, to update that, and then to update zoning depending on what the plan should be. So they'll both come back. I think Alderman Mulder made the referral on for downtown zoning review, particularly the uses and some of the zoning, the four categories he just mentioned, and the planning genesis was really in the budget process. So they actually go together. There's nothing further for the committee to do, so we're pushing it off our plate so the commission can have the hearings, get the plan, make any zoning recommendations, and send it back to us.
Okay. Alderman Braham?
But there's no limit that's saying that the commission won't be doing these in parallel. Because we're pretty much, we being the city, are making a recommendation to them to review both of these, the plan and the zoning aspects. I know the preference is to do them sequentially, but it just seems to me that we're clouding the water for the directive to the commission by issuing a recommendation for them to review both. If they have the bandwidth, I would assume that they would start to review both, and that wouldn't give us the best product at the end of the game.
Okay. Any other comments? Clerk Spencer?
Levin.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Braham.
No.
Toledo.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Conquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mullener.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkauf absent. Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
12 ayes, 1 nays, 1 absent.
12 ayes, 1 nay. Motion carries. On to agenda item 6.6. Clerk Spencer, I would ask that you read the recommendation.
Therefore, it is the recommendation of the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee that the City Council authorize the city attorney to prepare the proper documents for the approval of a consultant contract with Hazel Levine Associates to perform downtown planning services for the contract amount of $51,290. Signed by Scott M. Levin, Chairman, Danny Palumski, Vice Chairman, unsigned by Mark A. Mulliner, Alderman, 7th Ward.
Okay, to put this before the council, I will ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Levin, second by Alderman Palumski. Alderman Levin, follow up to the previous report.
That's exactly what it is, Mayor. It's a follow-up to the previous report. I think we've kind of covered it, so I don't really have anything to add, except this is the contract for the consultant portion of what we discussed.
Alderman Mulliner.
Based on the formal, the last vote, I'm supporting this and I'd like to withdraw the minority report completely.
Okay. Any other comments or questions as it relates to this report, 6.6 on the agenda? Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to thank the committee for moving this report forward and for their attention to this, the idea of the planning process. I think the process is critically important, primarily because I think our downtown is critically important. I'm sure I'm a bit biased since half of the downtown area is in the First Ward, but I think it's one of our city's most valuable assets. And it certainly plays a big role in developing the character of our community. And my sense is that currently the character of our downtown and the identity is in a bit of crisis for our downtown, and not just because of building height. You know, I think we need a clear vision for what we want our downtown to look like, and we need to be fairly deliberate in defining what the experience of our downtown area is. I think one of the things that has made me think about this a lot recently is a report that was commissioned by City Center and was completed by a company called Business Districts, Inc. They do a lot of work in downtown areas. And among their observations is that we, in Elmhurst, are lacking an overall mix of businesses. Or they actually say the overall mix of businesses lacks management. They also said a current strategy does not exist to address downtown business development. And I think those were two fairly bold statements that I would like to have addressed. I don't think it's going to be a component of the downtown plan as Housel Levine has proposed, but I do hope that we can conduct some type of economic development planning that, you know, maybe beyond just our downtown area. But I think in trying to define what our experience is and making sure it's a unique experience, I think the market analysis and economic development is a piece of that. So I certainly support the work that Housel Levine has outlined, and I hope that we can complement that by an economic development piece, hopefully in the not too far off future.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the roll.
Levin.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Conquest.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf, absent. Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, motion passes. Majority report 6.6 is approved. On to reports and recommendations. 7.1, Mayor Morley, that's me. Alderman Mulliner already stated St. Patrick's Day Parade is this Saturday, kicks off at noon, and Governor Rauner will be there, so hopefully we'll have a big crowd to welcome him to Elmhurst. I actually had a chance to speak with his staff a couple times already this week. Very excited, and when I asked, does Governor Rauner want a car, they said no, he prefers to walk, and he's going to try to meet as many people as possible. So looking forward to welcoming him to Elmhurst. The Historical Museum recently opened their exhibit, By All Accounts, The True Story of Elmhurst. And I had an opportunity to go to the opening for some of the donors on, I think, the 25th of this month. And I tell you what, it's very impressive. I would encourage anybody who has the opportunity or time to go to the Historical Museum and check out really the history of Elmhurst. And Brian Burhager, Lance Towser, and the Heritage Foundation, who kicked off the capital campaign, raised over $300,000 to get it done. They've taken a way to really bring the history into the present, actually, and it's very interactive and very interesting and very tangible. So that was good to see. Certainly something that represents Elmhurst well. Elmhurst Commission on Youth, I mentioned this a while back when we were reconstituting the commission. One of the things I asked them to do is set up a job fair, which they are doing. And we have information here at City Hall. I believe it's on our website as well. But businesses in town can register by March 25th to participate to help keep the youth of Elmhurst employed. The event itself is on April 15th, and more details to come. But looking forward to that. Job fair direct questions may be directed to Patty McKiernan at 630-878-7622. And that's it, except I don't get an opportunity really to opine during discussion. I want to thank the entire DP&Z committee for Alderman Mulliner for his original referral, but the entire DP&Z committee for all of their efforts and hard work as it relates to planning in downtown. I think the council recognizes that the downtown of Elmhurst is really the heartbeat of Elmhurst, and it's a lot of times the first thing that people see when they come into town. So I know everybody up here on this dais takes it very serious and is looking forward to positive redevelopment in the downtown. So I appreciate the committee's hard work. City Manager Grabowski.
I have nothing tonight, thank you.
Any other reports from the dais? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to quickly touch base. I received a newsletter on the former Elmhurst Hospital, the Berteau campus, the construction status for the Nitty development. I wanted to touch on some of those points since that borders both the 3rd and the 4th Ward. The remains, if you would, from the hospital, the former hospital, the demolition is within 1 or 2 months of being complete, the physical demolition. They're not sure when it will be complete because it is dependent on the weather. 3rd Street home construction, as probably anybody who drives in the neighborhood knows, 8 new homes are under construction. Most of that work that remains is internal to the structures, but there are some other things that will be happening soon. ComEd is scheduling some underground utility work on 3rd Street near the homes, and this is anticipated to happen in April, so that's right around the corner. And then Schiller Street construction, the final planning stages for this is construction of 10 new homes along Schiller Street, and it's expected to start, obviously, probably in spring. They didn't actually give a month, but that's around the corner as well. And as always, if there's any questions, there's a hotline to contact the Nitty Development folks directly and or an email address. Thank you.
Okay, any other reports from the dais? Alderman Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, I just want to throw a thank you out to our own Deputy Chief Jim Cavitan, who is going to be starring in a starring role in a public service announcement about railroad crossings and the awareness around that. It's obviously still dangerous. We had a tragedy in Chicago today. There was one in Downers Grove yesterday. So all the technology in the world, sometimes you can't police that too much. You can't police it enough. So thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. Appreciate all you're doing. And then the fire department wants to remind everybody, next Sunday is we spring forward with the daylight savings time, and it's a good time to check your smoke alarms. All of your alarms. Just a little PSA there.
Okay, and I would add on to that, and are we going to see the deputy chief on the big screen?
He will be on the big screen, I believe. Jim will give you a little leeway here. You can shout out, but I think you're working something out with the York Theater.
Yep.
March 6th and goes through April 3rd. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other reports? Seeing none, we'll go on to resolutions. 8.1, Clerk Spencer, would you please read the resolution?
Here, I've got it. Thank you. A resolution approving and adopting a police and firefighters pension funding policy for the city of Elmhurst.
Okay, in order to put this resolution before the council for approval, I will ask for a motion to approve. Motion by Alderman York, second by Alderman Dunn. Alderman York, any comments?
Very brief, Your Honor, thank you. Attached to the resolution is the original committee report from October 16th, 2013. Many of you probably remember this meeting. This was a fiscally painful, yet a fantastic decision made by this council to look at all the variables that go into funding public safety pensions. So what we're looking at tonight in the resolution, unfortunately, is just a little bit of a lag in doing some record keeping and getting this made into a resolution. So nothing has really changed from the report from 2013. We just kind of didn't get around to doing the resolution as soon as we should have, and we're getting this on the books right now. So,
okay, any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the roll.
York.
aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Onquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf, absent. Deuter.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, resolution passes. Motion passes, resolution is approved. 9, other business. Any other business? Alderman Toledo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Curveball, you see that?
Regarding Resolution R22, 2015, otherwise known as the engineering services in connection with Pine Street, Avon Avenue City Area Stormwater Improvements Project, I'm pleased to have been able to support this resolution this evening. I'd like to thank the Public Works and Building Committee for their focus on projects and policies that can help mitigate stormwater flooding in our community and also in the 4th Ward, which I represent. This particular resolution begins the engineering design work, which will help mitigate stormwater flooding for residents on Pine Street, Avon Avenue, and East Court, all neighborhoods in the 4th Ward. Getting this project moving forward and one step closer to shovels in the ground is one of my top priorities, and I was pleased to vote in favor of this resolution tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't get my hand up quick enough for the resolution we just passed on the police and fire. I just want to make sure it's clear that this council's been doing what that resolution says all along. We're just codifying it. So, you know, the financial steps necessary, the commitment to keep the police and fire funds, pension funds funded, we've been doing that for the last 2 years. This resolution just says this is, you know, what we've been doing is what we're going to do and continue doing because it's very important. So I just want to make sure that's clear to everybody that we've made the hard decisions and we're doing them.
Okay. Any other business? Alderman York.
Thank you. That's a very good point Alderman Healy brought up. The other thing, too, that's worth mentioning is because the report is a year and a half old, part of what the committee and city staff said we would do, too, is, you know, look at the funding methods periodically as we go along, and we kind of targeted 3 to 5 years. We did have discussion at the committee meeting regarding this, and I think we're still on that timetable. Things that might change that would be some sort of a major change in economic conditions or anything, but actually we've been operating under pretty favorable conditions with the equity markets behaving like they have in the past couple of years, and the steps that we took to make the actuarial adjustments were wise in hindsight and have proved to be wise going forward from the time they were made. So thank you very much, Alderman Healy.
Okay. Any other business? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Alderman York, second by Alderman Dunn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.